right. There we go. Should be good now. Hey, future Greg here. I had originally recorded the book reviews and CD reviews on the same day, but unfortunately gotten sick, and then 2 kids' birthdays came up, lots of other stuff, and it took me a while to get this book review out. So I just wanted to preface it with that. Wanted to give an extra special thanks to Myke Hideous for everything that he's done in the last couple months, including sending t-shirts for both my kids, sending me this Empire Hideous sweatshirt that originally belonged to Myke Hideous, and also for the handwritten note from Myke. It's a really nice touch, really appreciate it, and I just wanted to add this little intro, whatever you call it, before we get into the book review, which I'm going to get back to now. Anyway, thank you, thanks Myke, and on to the book review. Hey there, Gigi here, and I'm back this time with my first book review. We're reviewing King of an Empire to the Shoes of a Misfit, the Memoirs of Myke Hideous. Recently had a chance to sit down and have a chat with Myke Hideous. I'll put a link in the description to the interview. It was a great chat, really insightful interview, very personable character, definitely a great interview guest. So anyway, on to the book. This is the 3rd pressing. First pressing came out a while ago, many years ago, and then I think he said 2016 possibly was the 2nd pressing. Myke had told me in the interview he had kind of rushed to get it out, and there's some errors in it. There's overall things that Myke wasn't happy with, so we now get to the 3rd version, which is the one that I have. Anyway, so this will be a spoiler-free review. I would recommend this book to pretty much any musician, definitely any touring musician, anyone that's played in bands in their lifetime, I think will get something out of this book. I thought it was a great read. There's a lot of interesting stories in here. If you're buying it as a Misfits fan, there's all of that in there. There's plenty of Misfits stuff, lots of pictures, the stories, it's all in there. He starts out kind of going over a little bit of backstory, talks about his early life. Beginning part of the book kind of focuses on how he formed, the Empire Hideous. He goes over a lot in this book, which is kind of what took me so long to get this review done. It took me a while to get through the book, being a working full time and having 2 kids. Yeah, it's over 350 pages. So there's a lot to get through in here, but it's all interesting. It's never boring. It's always an engaging read. He talks about the first time he got cancer as a teenager, and then again in his early 20s. We actually talked about that when I interviewed him. There's some really interesting bits in here about, bands like Christ the Conqueror, and Myke actually did some artwork for Christ the Conqueror in the old days. There's a story in here where Myke talks about being in the hospital, getting cancer treatment, and Jerry only comes to visit him and, told him, hey, you got to get better because when you get out, we want you to be our singer. So there's some very interesting Jerry-only anecdotes in this book. He also talks about auditioning for the Misfits originally in 1995, which of course he ultimately lost the role to Graves, continuing the story of, trying to get Empire Hideous off the ground and doing everything DIY himself in the the late 80s and early 90s, so nothing like it is today. There's a lot of interesting parts about the New York City goth and club scene that of course Empire Hideous were a part of in the 90s, throughout the 90s. In 1998, when he disbanded the Empire Hideous. And then another interesting part is talking about how he came to join the Misfits after Michael Graves unceremoniously left to go do hockey camp or whatever Jerry's story was. He did ultimately 2 tours with them. Talks about touring in Europe and in South America. Talks about some of the struggles he had vocally, and the experience that he had with the band was not a positive one overall. He said there was a lot of drama, and he said he mainly felt disrespected. Overall was very disappointed with what he thought was going to be the job of a lifetime, but it turned out to be a fucking nightmare. Michael Graves comes back, and Kenny told him they've been working with Graves for a couple years now, and so they want Michael back in the band, and so Myke was again out of the Misfits. There's a lot in between. There's a lot covered in here, and it's definitely worth the read, so definitely check it out. After he had been ousted from the Misfits, started the band Spy Society 99, and then 9/11 happened a couple years later. But the Spy Society 99 record, that's a great record, definitely worth checking out. Also goes over his time that he spent as an addict. And talks about kicking that entirely, which, awesome, glad is drug-free, of course, now. The stories of the addiction and ultimately recovery, some of it's some pretty heavy stuff, but it's always an engaging read. The way Myke writes, he really has a way with, kind of crafting his story into just that, a really, great tale, and all of it true. So it's a hard read sometimes. It's tough to get through some of it. And I mean that in a good way, meaning it's just reading it, it's like, holy shit. Myke has a way with words, and it's just a great read, especially if you like biographies, if you like memoirs, just very entertaining. Gotta stop saying so much. And we get to, I guess, the last third of the book. He talks about reforming the Empire Hideous, doing what I believe is still, as of yet, the final Empire Hideous album, The Time Has Come. That one was originally supposed to be produced by Peter Steele. He talks about his relationship with Peter Steele at Typo Negative quite a bit in the book. Peter was hilarious. I say as if I knew him, but if you've ever watched a video of him on YouTube, you know how funny the guy was. Again, that was originally supposed to be produced by Peter Steele, the album The Time Has Come. He talks about how Peter had begun pre-production on The Time Has Come, and then unfortunately he passed away. And Johnny Nickel ended up doing production on that. We get towards the last chapter, and Myke talks about the, I guess we'll call it, fiasco that happened with the documentary that was originally supposed to be based on this documentary film, Living the American Nightmare, directed by a fella named Paul Bazile. I'm not a fan of this particular fella, but he does that Proud Boy shit, and like I said in the interview, I'm not about any of that, so I don't really, like to give him any more attention, but he did direct the film, so it's worth mentioning. He did some really underhanded stuff to Myke, and he talks about that in the book. He mentions in the interview, though, that they were good friends and that at one point he really liked Paul. So there's a really interesting part of the book in there, in that very last chapter, that explains a lot of the unanswered questions that I had. I tried to get him to elaborate a little bit during our interview, but again, it's all in the book, so like I said, no spoilers. That was an interesting part for me, the very last chapter, as I kind of had a lot of questions about that particular film and what happened with it. I remember hearing about the film and seeing a lot of promotional stuff for it, and then just seemingly nothing about it again, and like it never happened. I bought the film directly from Myke, from his website. You can get the book and all of his music. I believe he said he has one copy left of the Living the American Nightmare documentary on DVD, and that was as of the end of January. So, in conclusion, there is, a lot to take in here, but like I said, it's a great read. It's definitely a must-have, obviously, for any fans of Myke Hideous and the Empire Hideous, but it's also a great read if you've ever been in a band, if you've ever gone on tour, even if you're just a bedroom musician. I think you'll get a lot out of the book, and again, just overall very interesting. There's a lot of great stories in here. There's a lot of cool pictures, stuff back early Empire Hideous days. There's a lot of Misfits stuff in here. Any Misfits fans, there's some really cool stuff regarding the time with Myke Hideous in the band, but there's also, he dishes on Jerry and Doyle, and it's interesting, and it's funny, and it's just a good read. It's available at MykeHideous.com. I highly recommend picking it up. Myke's a great guy, one of my favorite artists, and definitely go over to his website, MykeHideous.com. Support your local artists. And I've got some more reviews coming up. We're going to be doing other Hideous reviews. A lot more videos coming soon. Yeah, there'll be more covers and lots more cool shit on the way. So thanks again to Myke Hideous. Don't forget, check out the website, check out the book, and if you haven't already, please like the video and definitely subscribe. Trying to get to 1,000 subs. Will it happen? Who knows? But hey, I can dream. Anyway, thanks so much and have a good one.